Hello and welcome to Stampin' by Hannah and to this final card making 101. Today I thought I would share my process with you when I'm making cards with a sketch. So today I'm using the Freshly Made Sketches sketch number 195 and I've selected the Crazy About You stamp set from Stampin' Up. I've got this kind of scalloped circle flower stamp and the leaf stamp from that set, and I'm going to use Old Olive to stamp this leaf straight down onto my Whisper White card mat. As you can see, I made a complete hash of this. So I turned my Whisper White piece over, but actually I could still see through. I could still see that ink on the other side. So I've grabbed another piece of Whisper White and I've stamped on that instead. I know I can, there's still an inky mess, but it's okay. And I've stamped those leaves again in that Old Olive to make a branch. I have then also got 3 more ink colours for the scallop flower. And I've got another scrap piece of Whisper White here. This is Daffodil Delight that I'm going to stamp with first, and I'm going just gentle taps onto that ink pad to pick the ink up, and then straight down and straight up off of my Whisper White to stamp that. And I'm going to clean my stamp in between before stamping my second flower in Tempting Turquoise. Again, gentle light taps onto that ink pad to pick the ink up, and straight down and straight up onto that cardstock to stamp it. My third colour here is Melon Mambo. I've cleaned my stamp again in between, and I'm inking that stamp up and stamping it down onto my Whisper White. I close that ink pad up before I put my fingers in it, and I'm going to choose my sentiment. This stamp set has a massive collection of different sentiments, and it also coordinates with some framelits so that you can create even more variations of the sentiments here. I'm going to choose the You Make Me Happy that I'm going to stamp in Old Olive in a second. So I've pulled both of those stamps out of the case, and I'm going to mount them up onto my sentiment block. I've pulled out my Old Olive again to stamp these. I'm going to stamp them separately, one on top of the other. And I'm sorry this is in the bottom of my frame. I use grid paper from Stampin' Up that's 17 inches across by 11 inches tall, and I still managed to only use the last 3 inches at the bottom of my grid paper. So there's my sentiment. And I've got my 1 3/4 inch scallop circle punch, which fits these scallop flowers beautifully. I have to say this isn't a very happy punch. I need to get some oil into it, I think, because it's actually making the cardstock jump a little bit, which is fine. I managed to rectify it with the first 2 stamped images, but the Melon Mambo one I have had to alter a little bit, but we will get to that. So those 2 are there, and then here we go. It takes me ages to get this one lined up, and then it jumps at the last second, and my image is just off enough that I just don't like it. So I'm going to pull out my Melon Mambo again, and that piece of scrap Whisper White, and it didn't stamp very well the first time round, so I'm going to have to stamp it a third time to get the ink quality that I wanted. Even card makers that make cards all the time, we still make mistakes. We still have days where nothing really works. So this is get that punched out, and then I'm going to pull out my stamping trimmer. Yes I am. Am I? Oh, I can't remember. Like I said, it's been a while since I filmed this, between filming and doing the voiceover. Yes, I pull out my stamping trimmer, and I'm going to trim it off at 1/2 inch. So I've got my little sentiment there on my 1/2 inch strip of Whisper White. It's about half an inch by about 4 inches, I think, that strip. Here is my card base. It is a piece of A4 cardstock cut in half and folded in half. This is Old Olive, and I'm going to mat this my Whisper White mat onto my card base with a bit of snail adhesive. Just lining that up, just by eye. I quite often find that doing things by eye, I get things straighter than I would if I attempted to use some other method. So I'll turn those all over and use some dimensionals just to get that level of dimension onto my card. Each one gets a dimensional, and then I'm going to layer these on so you can still see those leaves popping out from the back. And if you can see where those two leaves are crossed over, that's now hidden behind some carefully placed punch work. So there is those. The sketch has 3 circles across the front of the card with the sentiment across the circles, and this is sort of my variation on that. I do try and vary the way that I use a sketch, and use the sketch as a guideline rather than this is what I must do. So I'm just using my scissors to banner the ends by chopping up the centre and then making 2 triangles between the corner of the cardstock and the tip of where I've snipped up the middle to make little banners. We do have a triple banner punch that makes the most perfect banners from Stampin' Up. I haven't actually got my hands on that yet. I'm still using the old paper snipping method. I've got 2 dimensionals on the back of that sentiment strip that I'm just going to pop onto the front of there, just so that it's then level with the front, with those flowers on the front. And I did think that was going to kind of be it, but then I've looked at it and gone, oh, it's a bit plain. So, because that is the sketch, but I've got some jewel rhinestones out, and I'm also going to grab some Melon Mambo cardstock and my flower from the Itty Bitty Accents punch pack, and I'm going to punch out 3 of these lovely little flowers from the piece of Melon Mambo, and I'm going to give them some dimension by popping them onto my Stampin' Pierce mat, grab my Stampin' Pierce mat and using the back of my paper piercer to I just push the back of my paper piercer into the centre of those flowers to pop the petals forwards and make them a bit 3D. Using 3 of the smallest size rhinestones into the centre, just to give them a bit of bling, and then we'll turn them over so that the backs are facing upwards, which makes it much easier when it comes to adding your mini glue dots to attach them onto your card. Unfortunately, this bit you can't see what I'm doing at all, but I'm actually using my paper piercer to fold those mini glue dots in half to make them a bit smaller, ready for the backs of those flowers, because the flowers are quite little. If you use a whole mini glue dot, I'm always a bit worried that I'm going to be able to see the glue dot behind the flower. I'm popping those straight onto that banner, just using my paper piercer to move them around, and that could be finished, but I have to add a little bit more bling, so I'm using the medium sized rhinestones into the centre of those flowers, just for a final bit of sparkle. And there is my finished card and the end of Card Making 101. So thank you very much for joining me in this series, and I hope to be back really soon. Subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you later.